Hello, my name is Hal, and you've come to Quail Studios Guitar. We're going to talk about secondary dominant. What is a secondary dominant? Last week we talked about dominant, the dominant chord, like the G7 going to the C, and what it means. And this week we're going to talk about secondary dominant, and hopefully we'll be able to clear up some things for you. So let's get right to it. Let's get right into where the notes are on the guitar, because this will help you to find out where the dominants are and the tonics. And the tonic is basically the main note. Last week we went over where the notes are on the guitar. Open E, first fret is F, third fret is G, fifth fret is A, 7, B, eighth fret is C, 10th fret is D, and then we're back to E on the two dots, the 12th fret. On the A string, A is open, B is on the 2nd fret, C is on 3, D is on 5, E is on 7, F 8, G 10, A on 12 where the two dots are, 12th fret. In any key that you're working on, you've got something called a tonic, which is your main chord. So we're going to be working in the key of C today, because we're going to work with the song Can't Help Falling in Love. And this was recorded by Elvis Presley back in 1961. Now the chords in the C major scale are C, D minor, that's the second chord in the scale. E minor is the third chord, F is 4, G is 5, and A minor is 6. So when I talk about the 2 chord, that'll be D minor, the 1 chord will be C, 5 chord G, 6 chord A minor, 3 chord E minor, and so on. Now the 1 chord is what we call the tonic, the main chord. And the dominant in the key of C is your G chord, or G7. I like to play G like this, not putting this finger down, but muting my A string. Now, that's the dominant, or the dominant 7 to the tonic. G7 to C. Now, here's a C, and here's a G. C is on the 3rd fret, A string, G is on the 3rd fret, E string, tonic, dominant. On here, you have a D note, 5th fret, A string, and then 5th fret, E string, that's an A note. Now, if this were the tonic, the D, then the dominant would be the A. And here, on the 7th fret, the E note on the A string, and then the B note on the E string. If this were the tonic, then the B would be the dominant. E, tonic, B would be the dominant. Which is really handy because you can see tonic, dominant, tonic, dominant, tonic, dominant. You can see those relationships visually. The beginning of the song goes like this. Wise men say. We have a C, which is a tonic, to a dominant, which is the 5 chord, to an A minor, which is the 6 chord. Up to this point, we were in the key of C, but all of a sudden in the bridge, it plays an E minor. Now the E minor, we could be going to the key of E minor, and if we are, then our B7 is our dominant. But if we analyze it like we're in the key of C, our E minor is our 3 chord, and our B7 is what we call a secondary dominant, because it's the dominant to the E minor. Like a river flows surely to the sea. Like that, back and forth. Now when it gets to the part that says something, all of a sudden we have an A7 chord. There is no A7 chord in the key of C. Well, how does that happen? Well, the next chord is D minor, which is the 2 chord in the key of C. Now, the 2 chord, if we were in D minor, an A chord would be the dominant. So what happens here is we go to the A7. Let's see, let's start on the E minor there. Some things are meant to. A7, which is the dominant of D minor, B. And then we go to a G chord, which is the dominant, back to C. See how that works? Isn't that cool? So a secondary dominant is the dominant to another chord in the key that you're in. It's actually a dominant to any chord. But if you're in the key of C, then your secondary dominant means that the dominant that you're playing is not really in the key that you're playing in, but it's like we're moving to another key just for a moment. There you go. That's how dominants work, and that's how secondary dominants work, and I hope that kind of clears things up. I know you might still have some questions, and I would be willing to answer your questions. You can get in touch with me at Patreon or Subscribestar or my email, lessonswithhal@gmail.com, and email me there if you have any questions. Also, if you email me, I might ask for a donation, which would be awesome, especially if you're taking lessons from me. Thanks so much for your support, and you can get Can't Help Falling in Love in my book, Quail Studios Music and Lead Sheets. Look in the description on how to get it. I really appreciate your help and your support. Also, there's an awesome music stand that I use that's in the description. Here's a link right here up on the right-hand side of the screen that you can click on and see what the music stand is. I just got a message from Kraft Geek just this week, and they're coming out with a new light music stand that I think is a little cheaper, and you'll be hearing more about that later. And I'm going to have a giveaway for it. Okay, we'll talk to you later. Thanks for being here. We'll see you later.